All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting, and I do mean exciting, episode of Inclusion Matters podcast with Inclusion Pro Wrestling. Our guest is Moose Marrow. Of course, I'm joined by the ever-loving, egotistical, Big Bird-loving, Orange Cassidy, orange juice loving, crippled Messiah. Of course, I'm the heartthrob, the women thrive to, they flock to me. I'm the heartbreaker. But, before we get into our interview, Inclusion Pro Wrestling. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Inclusion Pro Wrestling is, as much as people have said, not going to get off the ground. Ladies and gentlemen, it is going to get off the ground. We are now here to officially say our launch date is November 25th, 2023 at the Rain Church in Kelso, Washington. Tickets will be on sale very shortly. Ringside tickets are $25. General admission are $20. More information to come. Before we get started again, I'd like to also thank Dotai Tattoo Gallery to be one of our sponsors. So without further ado, let's hand it over to Moose. Tell us about yourself.
Hey guys, how you doing out there in interweb land, as well as up there in Washington? It's been a long time since I've been to Washington State. I've spent a lot of time there. So those of you that know me probably have known me by a couple different names over the years, the last 25 years. It's mostly been Moose Marrow. Like I said, it's been Corporal Moose. It's been the main event Moose Marrow. There was a nightmare stint in there where I was kind of a monster character. But this time around, coming back and kind of saying my goodbyes to the industry, as it were. It's the American Warhammer. From my military background, as well as my Nordic lineage, as far as my family goes, that's working into kind of a new attitude and stuff for us. So I'm your current BCW, Pacific Northwest BCW, No Limits Hardcore Heavyweight Champion. I won it from the Hellhound Petrov at the beer station. It was just a battle. If you guys haven't seen the video or the pictures from it, we went pillar to post and gave him a show for sure. But, I mean, like I've done many times over the years, I walked out with the championship. I'm kind of a hard guy to keep down. Everybody knows it.
And the funny thing, he brings up Petrov. He is yet the only member of Hellbound to appear on this podcast.
He's the only member that's been on your guys' show?
He's the only member that has
the only one that had that.
Wait, maybe you, before my title defense in September, maybe you should get him on there and get his opinion.
We've been trying to get Petrov to square up with us, but you know what? He's not as easy to get a hold of as the Rat King and Draven and.
Some of us, we're our own favorite subjects, so we got no problem talking about things.
So, anyways, Messiah, if you think you can get away from your orange juice loving character enough, why don't you start us off with questions?
So, who were your wrestling heroes growing up?
Growing up, the guys I idolized in the business were Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair. One of the reasons I was never a bandwagon fan, so I was never, when I was really young, I was a Hulkamaniac. Of course, everybody was in the 80s. And I was also an Ultimate Warrior fan when I was a really young kid. But then when I decided to actually get in the business and realize what it took to work and put on these good matches and on all these things, I got much more respect for guys like Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. Their gimmicks, I feel like, were just unapologetically themselves. Ric Flair was Ric Flair all the freaking time. Dusty Rhodes was Dusty Rhodes in and out of the ring, and their characters was just them with the volume cranked up to 10. And that made their characters more believable. You were able to get behind them more. You cheered or booed them more because they were more of a believable person. It wasn't an undead person that was never going to die, or somebody that was mutilated by fire. It was still, it had that mystique to it and the mystery to it, but it wasn't far-fetched enough where you felt like you were getting behind a make-believe character. To me, anyway.
I agree with that.
So before we get into our next question, we'd like to thank our show sponsor, Kevin Watson at American Family Insurance. So for all your insurance needs, please see Kevin Watson.
Yeah.
Next question we have for you, sir, is, in your personal opinion, the top 5 female wrestlers of all time.
Of all time?
Yep.
Yes, Anthony?
I would say the Fabulous Moolah and Mae Young would definitely be on that list just because of their, they laid the stones for what those women did after them. But I would have to say Lita, Molly Holly, and China would be my other 3.
Very cool. Very good one.
You said top 5, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Top 5.
Yep.
All right, Messiah.
So, who have been some of your biggest rivals in your career, whether that's in BCW or some of the other promotions that you?
So I would say my biggest rivalries over the years were usually over, a heavyweight championship of some kind. So I would say me and Gentleman George Michael have battled for years on end over the WC championship, over PNPW championship, CPW championship. Me and George Michael, back and forth, a lot of years. Me and Diafalo the Butcher, Dabashi from Washington. That was a feud that was magic and never got to get finished. I would say me and Buddy Highway, we've only wrestled a handful of times together, but it was a great match. Something that I remember for a long time. Not really a feud or a rival, really, but me and Aaron Bolo had one of the best matches of my career. Guys like Matt Ecstatic. Like I said, I don't know about feuds really, but rivalries. It was just there were just certain guys that just clicked with, and we had made amazing matches that stand the test of time. So rivalries, though, I mean, it was hard. It was a lot of guys in my size category. I have guys like rest in peace, the legendary Thunder, Exile, guys like Brian Bedlam. There's not more than Richie Magnet. There's not a lot of guys in that category that were a 6'3", 300+ pound super heavyweights in the independent wrestling industry. In the indies, most guys aren't that size. So like I said, I was competing with only a handful of other guys for kind of that spot. But I was a very big family man too, so my traveling was limited later in my career.
Got ya. So, top 5 male wrestlers of all time.
Top 5, Jake the Snake Roberts, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, the Pegasus Kid, and probably Sting.
Very good. So, what's the craziest crowd you've ever wrestled in front of?
Craziest crowd I ever wrestled in front of. You talking about just size-wise, or just with their kind of their energy?
Like the energy, kind of like something that happened. You were like, "Wow, didn't expect that one."
So we did a show when I was coming up. We did one up in Washington, Vancouver, Washington, and it was a rock and wrestling show. So it was like a battle of the bands and a wrestling card at the same time. So a couple bands would play. It was heavy metal. So, it was the energy was pretty crazy. So they'd play a couple bands, and then we'd have a couple hardcore matches, then a couple more bands would play, then a couple more matches, and it kind of went back and forth like that for the night. So that was That one was a pretty rowdy, pretty intense crowd.
Wow, very nice. So what's the biggest name you've ever competed against?
Ever against?
Yeah,
I would
or with.
say. I would probably say Mike Modest.
Ooh, very cool.
Mike Modest or Randy Taylor with the Trash Man from Portland Wrestling. He was he was my original trainer.
Very nice.
All right, sorry, I was taking a phone call from a personal friend of yours, Mr. Moose.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And I've got an invitation for you that this personal friend of mine told me to extend to you.
Oh.
Okay. He is our booker for Inclusion Pro Wrestling. And he says that if you'd like to come wrestle for us, to look him up. He said, tell you T-Rex approves.
T-Rex approves, huh? Okay.
Does that name ring a bell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've known T-Rex for a really long time, almost as long as I've known some of these other guys. I mean, I think one of my first Oregon championships, he might have even been the referee when I won the CPW television championship.
He was, in fact, the referee for that match because he just told me that.
I gotta say, I've got a pretty good memory, even with all that. So even with all the chair shots, I still remember all right.
So he's
But your inaugural show is in November, and I will be in the state of Texas.
That's okay. We've got one. I think we're going to try to do a New Year's Eve show too.
Okay. Like I said, if I'm back in town, you guys give me enough heads up. I'll see what I can do, but I can't make any promises just because I am in October headed to the great state of Texas to continue my next step of this journey. So
very cool. And he also we'll talk off air on that one. We'll talk business after. So
okay.
So what questions did you ask, Nate, so I don't ask the same ones and look like a fool?
He asked me my top 5 male wrestlers, and I think it was like my biggest feud.
Okay.
Business.
Okay. Cool. Then he didn't do my favorite one. Then okay. So the next question we'll ask you is what is your post or your pre and post match routines?
So my pre-match routine has been the same since my very first battle royal ever as a professional, and that was I took my entrance music and I put it on repeat, and whether it be in my car or on my headphones, I listen to it over and over and over and over until I'm actually getting ready to go through the curtain. And I always know that it's the right song because when I'm trying to pick out certain songs, because I mean, really, it's like a light switch. It's a character you're getting into, or it's a part of yourself that you're bringing out. And I feel like that actually has to be some kind of mechanical motion almost. It might sound a little chaotic. Probably most people that aren't wrestling fans or understand our business would think that we have multiple personalities, probably, which it might not be wrong. Like I said, that. So pre-interview, I've been in the locker room. Usually, I sit by myself because I kind of got to get in my own zone, put my pads on, get all my tape. The wrist tape's the last thing to go on, and then the headphones come off, and I'm usually behind the curtain. And like I said, it's really just kind of replaying that, getting into that zone. And so music is what helps me do that. Usually it's my entrance music or kind of a workout tone or whatever. Post-match, I'm like every other indie wrestler or professional wrestler, probably for that matter. I want to see my match. I want to see who recorded it. And if somebody in the locker room so that I can watch it, so I can see what I did wrong and, how I can make it better. I've always been a very big perfectionist as far as my craft goes. I'm always my biggest critique, my biggest critic. So post-match, Younger years would probably be a different scenario. Now I go and I get something to eat, hang out with the family, and go home and rest up my old bones. In my younger years, it was probably a little bit more of a horseman style after party agenda, but I'm a family man now, so.
We can't hear you, Nathan, so adjust your microphone real quick. And this gives me a chance to, as T-Rex was calling me, announce thank you to the Burgerville of Longview Kelso for being a proud sponsor of Inclusion Pro Wrestling.
Heck yeah.
So,
Nice.
All sorts of breaking news tonight. Sorry.
Yeah, that one I didn't even know. So, if you had a dream opponent from any generation, no questions asked, who would it be and why?
Taz.
Very nice.
Very cool.
I was like I said, I'm 43 years old, so I was a huge Monday Night War ECW era wrestling fan before I started getting trained. That ECW locker room that you could only watch the pay-per-views on like a pirated satellite box at your friend's house. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Those matches, when I watched Taz and Sabu and RVD and those guys, that's still fun. Watching those matches still get me fired up today. Taz had a build I felt like was similar to mine and had a style that was similar, except for other than he was like 5'3", not 6'3", like I am. So like the Greco-Roman, the freestyle background, those kinds of things with wrestling and jiu-jitsu, those all kind of played a part into my character. So yeah, I would love to have like a submission match with Taz if I could, if it was like Make-A-Wish Foundation type thing.
Very cool. One of the coolest things I got to do, other than, doing this podcast and doing Inclusion Pro Wrestling, is I did an internet radio show with the original Pitbull, Gary Wolf. And that was for a person that, loved DCW like you did, that was amazing.
Yeah, I actually talked to Gary at one point because I was going to use it was like a pit bull in my gimmick at one point, and I got reached out to him to even ask if he cared or if he felt it was disrespectful to have it worded a certain way. I ended up not using it, but like I said, I did reach out to him at one point to see if his opinion. And I come from an old school lineage of wrestling, and today's wrestling is not how I got trained or the world that I was in when it started. So.
Right.
All right. Let's see here. I guess we'll just do a fun one. In your opinion, who's the best wrestler turned actor?
Roddy Piper.
Love that answer.
I think Hulk Hogan, John Cena, and The Rock are all horrible fucking actors. Hell, half the matches weren't even believable, let alone watching them do a movie.
Yeah, it must be a Northwest thing, because everybody that's in the Northwest has answered the hot rod.
Yep.
Well, if you go back and you watch that movie with him in it, it's way better than the crap they got now. So
You're not wrong.
You can't say a line like, I was here to chew gum and kick ass and while out of gum kind of thing. That's like, dude, you can't really beat that.
Exactly. All right, Big Bird.
So, top 5 tag teams of all time.
Top 5 tag teams, I would say the very first one on my list would be the Steiner Brothers. The second one on my list would be the Dudley Boys. Then the Hardy Boys, the Usos, and I would probably have to say the Brothers of Destruction.
Another great list.
Yeah.
Other than, I mean, the Brothers of Destruction as a tag team were kind of an immovable object. It really wasn't believable that anybody could have beat them. So that's probably why that they didn't stick together very long as a team. Because I mean, really, who's going to beat Kane and Undertaker?
Exactly.
Especially together.
Exactly. So, okay. As you can tell, Messiah's wearing yellow, so his favorite snack is anything peanut butter. But I think he just likes peanut butter because he likes to have the sticky fingers, and
I'm a pretty big peanut butter fan myself. I started doing when I was powerlifting, and I would just eat a thing of peanut butter, a spoon, and a gallon of milk.
And that answered my question before I even answered it. Awesome.
It's like a liquid Reese's without the chocolate. I mean,
exactly.
I'm not ashamed to say I've done that before myself.
Hey, I'm a fat kid at heart. I didn't get 360 pounds by sitting around not eating.
Well, okay, he answered that question without me even asking it. Cool. Nathan, your question.
What's that?
No, I was saying, so what's your favorite cookie or snack? And peanut butter. So you already got it. Good. Nathan, move on.
Okay, so we're gonna have you put your Booker hat on for a minute.
Okay.
From any generation, indies are available. Your dream WrestleMania card, 6 matches.
WrestleMania card from any generation, any genre, any kind of.
Yep.
I would say the main event, I would put Sting in his prime against, I would say Undertaker in his prime. Semi-main, let's do Stone Cold Triple H. Before that, I would want to see, let's see, Benoit and Finn Balor, actually.
Ooh, I like that one.
Then I would like to see RVD and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Tag team match, the Dudleys versus the Steiners versus the Usos in a 3-way.
Oh.
And the opener, I would want to see, let's see, probably primetime Macho Man versus I would say in his prime, that's hard one. Macho Man and let's say Macho Man and Shawn Michaels.
Oh. Okay, I have to say it. I don't care how much you would charge for that card, I would pay it. That was amazing.
People would kill their parents for that card.
You're not wrong.
Exactly.
I would push a baby into traffic to get that ticket.
Yeah. I'd push Nathan into traffic to get that ticket.
And I would take it. I'd be laying a crippled frogger, but I would take it.
Take a bump for a ticket like that for sure.
Okay. Okay, let's do this. Top 5 managers of all time.
Freddie Blassie. Paul Bearer. The guy with the tennis.
Cornette.
Mr. Fuji. And Miss Elizabeth. I mean, she made me with more of a valet, but I mean, I feel like she had more of an impact on the business in those years than a lot of managers did.
Isn't that the truth? All right, Big Bird, if you quit fascinating over Orange Cassidy, you can ask your question.
You know, as much as you brought him up, I think you're the one that's obsessing over Orange Cassidy. But that's
No, I don't like Roman Reigns wannabes. Thank you.
so.
Orange Cassidy is like 110 pounds soaking wet with a backpack. I wouldn't even put a belt on that guy.
Thank you.
But I have that opinion about a lot of indie wrestlers or smaller promotions because they don't, they've gone away from traditional professional wrestling and what made it so amazing and gotten into just high spots and tights with your name on the back. Like, I mean, there's no character development. I mean, at least Orange Cassidy has some kind of thing that he does, whether it be believable or even likable. It's a different story altogether. But I've witnessed a lot of bad gimmicks over the years, so I've even had them. So I get it.
All right, Nathan. Now, since they've crushed your Orange Cassidy dreams, ask your damn question.
Top 5 commentary teams of all time.
Say that again for me, bud.
Top 5 commentary teams of all time.
Commentary. Well, you got to go with Jim Ross and JR. Can't be beat. But I would say old school, like early 90s McMahon was a phenomenal announcer. Him and when him and the Body Ventura would do it, those were always great calls. I'm a huge Taz is a great announcer as far as ring commentary goes. I also missed Shane Douglas as a commentary. Shane Douglas is a phenomenal wrestling mind, and I would like to see him more on TV and more with that stuff. So I don't know if there's a 5 whole combos that I can come up with as far as commentary goes, but those guys definitely help wrestlers tell their story very well.
I completely agree.
All right, let's see here. What advice would you have for an up-and-coming superstar of today?
Like pre-training up and coming, or someone that's already kind of got their foot in the door?
Let's do a little of both. You can do a pre-training and then yeah.
I would say pre-training. Hopefully you participated in some other sport first before you got into wrestling, because I know that from being an instructor standpoint, it's one thing to teach you how to throw a wrestling punch. It's a whole nother story together if you don't even know how to throw a regular punch. I can't necessarily teach the body mechanics of you never throwing a punch before, or me teaching you a wrestling punch. There's a big difference. Just like someone who's played another sport before could run the ropes and learn to run the ropes with the technique much easier than someone who's never actually went outside and ran anywhere. So that's definitely, I would definitely say make sure that your athleticism is up to a point where, one, when you have more muscle mass and you're thicker, that ring doesn't hurt as bad when you hit. I feel bad for those guys that are skin and bones, 100 pounds with, their shoulder blades are just bouncing across that ring like a fucking skip rock. So, put some time in the gym, put some muscle mass on, look like a freaking wrestler. For one, when you think of pro wrestler, you don't think of little tiny scrawny guys that don't weigh anything, that have, just their little cute tights on and stuff. Wrestlers, if you remember, and anybody you can walk around the world and ask what a professional wrestler looks like. Almost every country and every person is going to tell you Hulk Hogan. Yep. Or some other kind of icon like that in our business that was memorable. There's a reason a lot of these guys aren't very memorable, because they didn't make an impact. And if you don't have the physique to make an impact, you need to have the wrestling mind to make an impact, like Mick Foley. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, you need to play to your strengths, hide your weaknesses the best you can as far as up and coming goes. Somebody who's already got their foot in the door, what I can tell you is that you have a chance. The chance of you making it big is the same chance as you getting struck by lightning. So what I would say is build your character, build your own fan base, do your own social media, your own marketing, build yourself up, make yourself somebody that somebody would want to hire, because nobody's going to do that for you at this level. They're just trying to get their own, get butts in the door, make money off the shows, whatever. They're not going to focus on promoting you. Hardly anybody in independence is going to promote their actual wrestlers. It's more about promoting the federation. So you have to be your own best friend, your own biggest fan as far as that goes. I've made my own 8x10s, my own T-shirts. You put all your own money into this business at this level anyway. So I would say make sure you do that, but also remember that when all this is gone, you can't get that away from your family back. Your kids, your wife, your close friends, your brothers. You can't get that time with them back. That's not something you can redo. There is times that I was away from my family and I was wrestling in some stupid city in front of 20 people for my own personal reasons when I had kids I could have been home spending time with. So along with wrestling and being successful in wrestling, unfortunately, it ruins relationships, it ruins households, it ruins marriages. You know, it's hard on kids and parents. So I would just say make sure you research on like how Sting did it in his later years, guys like that, so that you don't burn those bridges, because when the lights are gone and the cheering is all gone and it's time for your funeral, your fans aren't going to be the one that will be there. And I only say that because there's a celebration of life happening today for a very good friend of mine who passed away. And I know that all those years he spent away from his family, those fans didn't make up that time. He ended up passing away alone, and that's very, very sad. And I don't want to see any of my other brothers have that same thing happen.
And that celebration of life he's talking about, Nathan, is a friend of yours too.
Yes, it was Thunder, I believe.
Me and Chris knew each other for a very long time. He was there when I first broke into the business. He was there off and on throughout my career. He stayed with me at times. I've sold him a car. I helped him get on his feet. There's lots of things and stories and years I have with that man. But I'll tell you what, that his kids would have rather had Chris around than Thunder. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Wow.
And the main thing I can say, and I said this to Lone Star when we had him on, I used to go to the PMPW shows, and that was my first kind of like introduction into independent wrestling. And two of the main people I remembered were Lone Star and Thunder. And it was because of Thunder.
Also a really good friend of mine. Me and Lone Star have known each other for 20 plus years too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was for Thunder, it was because of his presence, right? Like he came out of that curtain and it was like, whoa, you know, who's that? You know what I mean? Even if
Absolutely.
you didn't know anything about like wrestling or whatever, you knew that this guy was something.
You were still watching
that,
because of his energy, because of everything about him. Your eyes were on him. He pulled the crowd into what he was doing, no matter what it was. And that's an amazing thing about Chris that he always had. I've been in the same ring with Chris and Animal from Legion of Doom. I've shared that squared circle with some legends, some amazing legends, and to hear guys like Draven, who I've been wrestling just as long as Draven has, and for Draven to call him, to cut promos and call me a Northwest legend, or that my career and the things I've done, and that they use the word legend when they refer to me, it blows my mind. I can't even wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
Well, another reason you're going to like our promotion then is Lone Star sold us his ring from his property. So that ring is now Inclusion Pro.
Lucky. If I wasn't moving to Texas, I was going to get it from him. So I didn't want to drive it to Texas with me. So you're lucky.
So that Inclusion Pro Wrestling ring is Lone Star's ring.
Which is, if I remember right, is the old NWA ring, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah, Ag Rollins had a match in that ring
Wow.
when he was still part of AOD, and I was part of Illuminati, I believe.
Wow.
So there's some history for your Inclusion Pro Wrestling ring.
Thank you for that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, actually, I think even if you look up Moose Morrow and Skag Rollins, I think the match is still on YouTube that has your guys' ring in it.
Okay, I know what I'm doing as soon as we get done with the podcast.
Okay. Well, now, yeah. Give me a minute, Nathan. Ask a question.
Yep. So I asked you what the craziest crowd was that you wrestled in front of. What's the craziest match you've ever wrestled in?
The craziest match I've ever wrestled in, I would say the Salem Street Fight with me and Jason Sullivan was pretty crazy. At that point, the devil himself, Derek Drexel, was actually Sullivan's manager. During that match, we went in the ring, out of the ring. We had chairs, barbed wire baseball bats. I actually ended up getting a one-man concerto on the metal steps from Sullivan. But I was also able to get Drexel away from Sullivan long enough to moose drop Drexel on the floor in front of the front row. So I would say that one, my Salem Slobberknocker hardcore tag team title match with Eric Baden, Max Ecstatic, and Dylan Devine. Probably one of my more favorite matches that I can remember, as far as just the crazy shit we did. It was all over the place. The camera work on that match was horrible. If they would have had a better camera crew, it would have been a phenomenal. I mean, it was still a really good match to watch. The Salem Slobberknocker on YouTube, that one's a good one. That one, I actually break out thumbtacks and a bunch of other stuff. A couple guys did a couple choke slams. One of my lines that I end up using throughout my career is that someone was leaving in a body bag. I cut it during a promo one time, just kind of said it on accident. I said I had a shirt that said "Straight Knocking Nerds Out." So when I cut the promo, I said I had a couple of nerds that were going to be leaving Salem in a body bag. And then when I got done with the match, I was covered in blood. I choke slammed Dylan and Matt into thumbtacks, beat them with broken pool sticks, and just destroyed everybody in the ring. And you can see me screaming into the camera, "I told you somebody was leaving in a body bag." So that's probably one of my favorite memories as far as those matches go.
Wow. Okay.
So I got a question for you guys, actually, with your Inclusion Pro Wrestling. You said that, so I already know who's wrangling your talent together.
Mm-hmm.
And then you two fine gentlemen that I've met today, other than, which I mean, having a great time other than the crocheted frog is throwing me off a little bit behind you. But other than that, I think we're having a good time. So are you guys going to be having an even card as far as like Lucha Libre, Pacific Northwest hardcore stuff? I mean, what is your guys' federation focus? Is it going to be a,
this is our
no ring ropes MMA ripoff? I mean,
this is
theatrical.
We're labeled we are labeled under theatrical, but we are using the ring. And that's just to get through some loopholes in Washington State, obviously.
Yeah, I remember.
But we have
that's why we always did our shows on the reservation.
On our first show, we have one lucha match. We have, I think we're trying to get a ladder match.
Yep.
We're not against doing some hardcore stuff if we can get into the right venue. Right now, we're just trying to get into the right venue. Our first show, of course, is going to be at a church, but the pastor goes, "Oh yeah, if you want to break shit, break shit." That's like, okay. Kind of odd in a church, but okay.
But it works.
Um,
I heard that same thing at a fairgrounds. I was at actually the Shelton, Washington Fairgrounds. I was in a crazy match, six-way match with Brian Bedlam, Dr. Luther, and Christopher Daniels.
oh,
And Dr. Luther decided he was going to put my head into the wall in the fairgrounds. And thank God he missed the studs, but it went right into the drywall. And I actually had to pay for the hole in the wall at the fairgrounds, whatever their convention center thing was.
yeah, that's where we were going to run. We were going to run at the Collis County Fairgrounds, but then it just didn't work logistically and money-wise.
So that was another match. Like I said, that one just came to mind. That was one I had almost forgot about. That was one towards the very beginning of my career when I first left. But basically, it was my first federation change. Street Fighter Tim Flowers had let me go from ICW, and I went to work for Michelle Starr and Extreme Canadian Championship Wrestling.
Yep.
At that time, Michelle Starr owned ECCW and was doing a fairground show in Shelton, Washington. And I got to do a fairground show there with them. And that's when I got to actually meet Brian Bedlam, Dr. Luther, Christopher Daniels, and a couple other guys for the first time. I think G-Shock was there with me. Yeah, I've been kicking around this business for a little. I was lucky. I started when I was 18. So.
Yeah. In fact, Mr. T-Rex has got some ideas for you already in the promote. I said that you'd be willing, and he's probably going to be blowing your inbox up here shortly. But I told him you weren't available for the first show. But we've got some pretty talented guys on our show that he said you'd probably enjoy wrestling.
Well, Washington is packed full of talented wrestlers. It's also packed full of backyard tards.
Well, I mean, we've got, to reveal some of our talent, Christopher Isaac.
Amazing. Great. I love Chris.
I believe Lone Star said that he's going to wrestle once or twice for us. Havoc. We've got Deontay Ford. And then we've got some CPW talent as well. Andrew Michelson and Tomcat. And some of those guys. So
well, the best thing I can tell you guys is just try to not do everything the same things everybody else is doing. That's gonna make a difference. So
no.
The thing is like the mission statement from War Inclusion. I mean, yes, it's wrestling, but I have a disability, right? I have cerebral palsy, so I'm in a wheelchair. And like 20 years ago, I went to a training school with Draven in Kelso, and I was told that I would never be involved in wrestling because of my disability, as far as like getting in the ring or doing anything, because, it's a physical sport, right? So disabilities don't, to them didn't mix. Well, I'm the type of person, if you tell me I can't do something, that just fires me up to do it even more.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm still here today.
And so it took me 20 years, and I was able to buy the ring. And so my mission and the mission of Inclusion is we're never turning anybody away. If you want to come in and try to live your dream of being a pro wrestler, you know what I mean, and enjoy a good show, come on in, right?
Well, the only thing I can tell you guys to maybe help out with you guys being a success, I can give you 2 pointers. One, don't let the person who books the matches be a champion.
Yep.
And like this is a shoot part of the business for your podcast. Champions don't need to be bookers. Bookers don't need to be champions. Guys involved in storylines and all that kind of stuff. I would get pointers and get things from guys because like guys like Havoc, Christopher Isaac, me, Lone Star, we've got 20 plus years in this industry, whether it be all indie experience or not. With a couple of small call ups, we've all kind of experienced that. So yeah, take those guys' knowledge and use it but you don't want just somebody. You don't want a Hulk Hogan WCW thing going on.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing with T is
that's the fastest way that I've seen any small federation trying to get started, turn around and crash. Is there's too many chiefs, not enough Indians, and one guy wants to be the champ, the booker, this, that, does all of those things. And the oldest joke in the business is that if you want to be champ, you just go buy a belt and a ring and start your own federation.
Yeah.
And guys like Ike Van Dyke, turds like that have done nothing but horrible things for our business as far as loyalty and respect and old school goes. And the only way you're going to get any respect of any wrestler, a real wrestler, is for you guys to have that old school respect mentality. So that's the only, like I said, the 2 cents from the American Warhammer as far as your guys' success moving forward.
No, and that's the thing with T is, he's recently retired from refereeing. He's recently retired from the ring as well. He just wants to book and see us successful. So, I mean, and he's got over 20 years just like you guys in the business. So hopefully with his knowledge and his knowledge of the veterans he's bringing in, we can actually be a success. So.
Yep.
I'm just saying, you guys are just going to have guys that are going to come in and want to start pulling parts of power and control and that kind of stuff to help their own kind of storyline. So just make sure you guys keep that as a separate entity from actual characters. That's like I said, that's my 2 cents on how to help with that.
Yep, absolutely.
And we appreciate that advice too, because that's great advice.
Yeah. I've done every aspect of this business. I've been a trainer. I've been a booker. I mean, short of owning my own ring and federation, I partnered and had one with a buddy and stuff before. So, like I said, I know where you guys are at, what you're getting ready to start into, and the best way I can say to build the respect of those old guys like Randy Taylor, that would probably, if you reached out, wouldn't mind helping. That's a wrestler that guys like Christopher Reisig and everybody else from that area, Havoc, There's a lot of knowledge out there to be had, like I said, and to change it up so you're not just doing the same old thing everybody else is doing.
Right.
Okay, Nate, let's do a couple more questions.
Actually, I think it's your question.
Is it mine? I was afraid of that. Okay, so he's already given us some of the bigger names he's wrestled. So what was one? Okay, so what are a couple of your favorite matches that you've had throughout your illustrious career?
One of my favorite ones, I would have to say, just because of the storytelling, was me and Diaphila, me and the Butcher for the WCW Championship. That was just amazing crowd heat and work. Just everything. It was like everything else was kind of frozen in time, and we were telling a story. The crowd was just eating up everything we were giving them. So that to me was a very big deal. It was one of the only matches we had wrestled for like a half an hour, and I think we only took one bump, and that was like for the finish. The rest of it was just crowd heat and work, and it was a whole different story than like what a lot of wrestling is nowadays. I had a coal miner's glove match with gentleman George Michael. Probably one of my favorites. Me and Dr. Cleaver had a cage match in Roseburg. Man, I've had me and Petrov. Our last hardcore match was pretty brutal. I mean, stun gun to my nuts and barbed wire baseball bats and flathead screwdrivers and cookie sheets and I ended up hitting him with a moose drop on an actual detour sign from a road construction place to win the belt. But yeah, I've had a lot of good matches over the years, a lot of fun ones. The Slobber Knocker was that hardcore tag match. That was great. That was a lot of, that was amazing. I've always had good chemistry with guys like Matt Ecstatic. Old school guys, from PWF, the Hollywood Stud, Avalanche, the Chef, lot of Washington wrestlers that most people don't even remember. The Urban Outlaw that looked like a bumblebee in a pair of overalls. I don't know if you guys remember PWF Washington
I do.
at the Temple Theater, but I mean, I had Roach Redding and Blaze Daly, the tag team of THC. Those were like two of my best friends in the whole business. Awesome Adam, the guy that had the Sabu ripoff gimmick, and they would wait until the show was over. Then he'd start jumping out of the balconies and putting himself through tables just to try and put his character over after the fans were like leaving the building. Like, I've seen some crazy shit in this industry.
Wow.
I've stayed in hotel rooms with Cedric and G-Shock and the Hellhound. I think is going by Gallo now from Arizona.
Wow.
He was GQ Gallo when I was working with him. Came up and I had my first battle royal with him. He hit me so hard in the face with a super kick that I don't even think I fell down. I think I just kind of froze in my spot, holding onto the rope. It just kind of couldn't fall over even. Damon Scythe. We've had amazing hardcore matches back and forth. I actually won the NWWA South heavyweight title from Damon down in Myrtle Creek, Oregon, in a hardcore match where I actually still, I think, have a scar over my eyebrow.
Oh, wow.
He gave me the Christopher Daniels I think it's the Fallen Angel.
Yep.
It's like a vertical spike kind of pedigree.
Yep.
Right.
So I took that on a metal chair in the middle of the ring, and actually it was under my eye. That's where it split up, but I have the picture still. And the belt we were using at the time was actually Randy Taylor's PWF Heavyweight Championship. We were using that as the NWWA South title, and I beat Damon Scythe for it down here in Myrtle Creek. So
very cool. Must have been one hell of a match because Damon was pretty nasty. So.
Yeah, actually, me and Damon always had a pretty mutual understanding. We wrestled pretty snug, I guess is the word I would call. But when I was taught how to wrestle, you wrestled a different way for TV cameras than you did for house shows.
Mm-hmm.
TV cameras catch everything. So if you miss anything or even come close, they're going to see it. So I always wrestled for TV, even at the house shows. So I've had guys. I mean, I don't know how well you guys have heard of me in the industry over the years, but a lot of people have called me a crowbar or that I was stiff. The wrestling me was like getting in a car accident. But like I said, my inspirations were Taz.
Mm-hmm.
And, guys like that, but I'm also, a legit super heavyweight. So my wrestling style, I feel like, has kind of been a combination of that. As my older years, I've turned into a little more of a street fighter, but that's just because I don't have the same speed and explosion I used to have.
Now I remember. Sorry, I have to say this. So I have heard of you before this because when I was in like some of the PW locker rooms or at Tito's, up in Hillsboro, I would hear about the crowbar, but it was always said with respect. But like, this guy's gonna put you through like the paces and make sure that. Like,
you were gonna know you were in a match with Moose for sure.
Oh yeah, that's what we kept hearing. So it's kind of nice to put a face that, you know what I mean.
But on that same token, like I said, I've had that reputation through the years, but I have never ever seriously injured another wrestler. No one ever had a match with. We didn't walk or go home that night or whatever. So my timing and keeping the other guy safe, even though we're trying to kill each other, has always been a huge priority in my mind. I can honestly say in 25 years, I've never seriously injured anybody as far as like because of a mistake or something like that.
Yeah, and every time I heard about you, it was always in the utmost respect, right? So like,
I'm glad to hear that. I've really tried to make that name for myself over the years. That when anybody talked about me or it was a locker room, you know, I feel like I could go into any locker room in the Pacific Northwest and be pretty welcomed.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in the Pacific Northwest locker rooms where they were pissed that I was there because they knew I was better than they were, but they didn't want me. They were one of those wrestler booker types that didn't want anybody taking their shine or their publicity away. So it was more of a egotistical kind of jealousy thing.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of like one last question before the Heartbreaker, who he thinks I'm the egotistical one, but he calls himself the Heartbreaker.
Well, I mean, you guys both had all those monikers until I showed up, and then I stole all of that. Because I am the DILF of the decade.
I like that one.
Way better than Heartbreaker.
That is true.
I'll give it to you, man.
So
I used to have a Moose shirt that said "big all over," and on the back it said, "I'm kind of a big deal. You should Google me."
So how'd your finisher come to be?
What's that?
How'd your finisher come to be?
So there was actually a little bit of a more metamorphosis as far as the Moose finisher goes. So if we're speaking about the Moose drop, that originally, the very first version of that was the rock bottom. I just called it the Moose drop, but I basically just did a rock bottom. That was the first time I had ever used it, ever called it that. Every time I even used that phrase, Moose drop, it was with using the rock bottom. Second time, I was like, okay, well, I can't just be ripping off somebody else's finisher. I have to come up with something of my own. And so I thought I was coming up with something original. Later on, ended up being the acid drop that Spike Dudley does.
Got it.
So I would hook the guy up in a bulldog, and I would jump out of the turnbuckle, springboard out the second turnbuckle, and drop him in a bulldog. If I remember right, Spike does it as a diamond cutter.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. That was the second version of the Moose drop. And I was really good at helping other guys make finishers. The late, great Sonny O'Mara, rest his soul, came up with the Dock Street Driver, the finisher for him. My other buddy, Patty McHale, had an Irish gimmick. I came up with the Patty Melt. You know, I was really good at coming up with new and innovative moves, but I couldn't come up with one for myself for some reason. And so I was actually working a show with Mike Modest. And I was always a fan of that Beyond the Mat finisher that Stone Cold says he's going to steal when he sees Mike Modest do it on the screen. Do you guys remember that?
Yep. Yeah, like the Emerald Fusion type.
Basically,
like
yeah, or white noise. It was later called by some guys. So I did kind of I was kind of doing a variation of that anyway, but I was using just a jackknife power bomb, calling it the shock and awe. I was using a choke slam, but I didn't really have like my own unique finisher. The Moose Crossing was just basically the crippler crossface that Benoit used. So I was feeling very unoriginal as far as my finisher went. And then I asked Mike if I could use a variation of that Mike Modest drop as the Moose drop. And so I set mine up a little bit differently. Mine's more of a midair kind of direction change, but it's basically the same Mike finisher as Mike Modest. So that's where the Moose drop came from, and that's how I got there.
Very nice.
It was a move that I could do to anybody, no matter how big they were, or small, and still have a very similar impact, I feel like, to the move. So that's actually one that nobody's kicked out of yet. in the nowadays age of everybody kicking out of everything, that's nobody's kicked out of.
Oh
yet.
yeah.
All right. So the final question today is, where can we find you on social media, and when is your next match?
So social media, I'm only on Facebook, just because I am a tattoo artist by trade in my day job. So I use that as far as my social media goes, and it's Benjamin Marrow, I don't know if Moose might be in there as like a middle name or whatever, but I'm on Facebook like that. If you look through the BCW site, there are probably some posts with my Facebook. You can probably add me from there. And the next match, I'm actually giving Petrov a rematch at this title September 16th at the Roseburg County Fairgrounds. PW, BCW, Saturday, September 16th at the fairgrounds. No limits, hardcore championship rules. And it's going to be Petrov, the Hellhound, versus the American Warhammer one more time.
All right. Very cool. All right, Nathan, hit the sponsors, please.
You want to hit the tattoo one? Because I still haven't memorized that one yet, because you have the card and I don't. That's usually how I memorize the...
Well, okay, so our first tattoo shop, hopefully first of a few that we get to sponsor, is Dotai Gallery Tattoo. They are in Vancouver, Washington. And Nathan, you can tell them Smalls sent you.
And then our other one is Los Jalapenos Taqueria in Longview, Washington. El Rancheros Mexican restaurant in Longview, Washington. American Family Insurance. The agent there is Kevin Watson, so go to him for all your insurance needs.
Is that the same Kevin Watson that was a referee?
I'm not sure.
Not sure.
I didn't know if you guys had done it. Somebody else in the business is a sponsor, so
I'm not sure.
And then Precision Power Washing, and you can find him on Facebook. Becky Bernhardt, the CARE program, which stands for Community Action Reaching Everybody, and you can find her on Facebook. And then Bruce Nichols Painting for all your painting, pressure washing, and lead removal needs, and you can find him on Angie.
Absolutely. All right. And again,
and Burgerville in Longview, Washington, who was our newest sponsor that you broke on the podcast today.
Yes, and we'll get into that afterwards. But okay, so again, we'd like to thank Moose for joining us this afternoon. You can see Nathan and I again tomorrow afternoon and hopefully tomorrow evening with our 150th episode. If that episode happens, that episode will be huge because it'll probably be the biggest name we've interviewed on this podcast that is not named Levi Cooper. And that is Congo Kong. So until tomorrow night, peace out, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.